want to introduce you to Sarah Adams. She is the author of Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy. And she's also a former CIA intelligence analyst and targeter, which I think, Sarah, means that if you watch the old show 24, you were Chloe, right?
Oh, totally.
Totally, okay. Sarah, welcome to the program. I'm glad you're here. I read a response from you yesterday on a tweet that was talking about both the assassinations in Washington, D.C. and the firebombing in Colorado, and you said, quote, "It's going to get a lot worse." Coming from you, that carries a little more weight than it would coming from me. What does it mean? Why do you believe the attacks are about to escalate?
Well, there's two pieces to it, right? One is just the fact that we've allowed kind of like this radicalization around this pro-Hamas movement. And as you know, if you don't nip that in the bud, it becomes militant at some point, right? That's how those movements work. But the other thing is, because of how we left Afghanistan and this large terrorist infrastructure, bin Laden's sons are planning another 9/11 on U.S. soil. And if we don't get ahead of that, we have something much bigger than obviously what we saw in those two places, which were still horrific events.
So do you believe that people are already here? I mean, we've left our borders open. How many terrorists do you think have come in the last 4 years, and are they already here?
Yeah, so I think the majority of them are already here. Obviously, every group has different numbers. So according to Al Qaeda, they sent 1,000 people here to participate in that one event. According to ISIS, they have 2,500 terrorists in the United States who are not here on a legal status. So that doesn't even account any ISIS members who are U.S. citizens, green card holders, or U.S. visa holders. According to the former head of Afghan's intelligence service, there's 1,000 Afghans here who are linked to a designated terrorist organization. So when you start putting these numbers together, we know other terrorist groups have come in, especially from the stands. A lot of the Pakistani terrorist groups have come in. The numbers probably in the last 4 years are easily over 8,000 terrorists have come in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's
what kind of damage could 8,000 people do? Are they coordinated at all? Any parts of these groups coordinated, do you think?
Some things are coordinated. There are some joint agreements between ISIS and Al Qaeda. Like ISIS is supposed to do the attacks in the United States kind of in mid-tier cities, while Al Qaeda's goal is going to be like Washington, D.C., aviation. So they did divvy up some types of different attacks they would do. And as you know, then there's just a lot of people that are bad actors that hate our country. You could trigger them at any time, right? Because they just don't like the way we live, the way women have rights, all those type of things about, how society works here.
For Father's Day, let your dad know he matters. Get him a gift from American Giant. They make clothing here at home with American cotton, American hands, and American heart. It's quality you can feel. Go to american-giant.com/Glenn and get 20% off your first purchase. That's american-giant.com/Glenn.
I did a show back in the old days when I was on CNN around the turn of the century, and it was about Beslan. And that has been the thing that has really terrified me, the idea that actors could be here and then go after our small cities and our schools and just cause terror in several small cities, unlike America has ever seen before, like Beslan.
Yeah, no, it's a really great example. And obviously, terrorists have long been focused on schools. We haven't talked a lot to administrators at schools, but we've had a lot of discussions over the last 6 to 8 months over different church surveillance incidents. And in some cases, they do have schools attached to them. And there are people that are asking questions about the schools or trying to access the schools who don't have children, right? It makes no sense. Why would you want to know anything about how a school operates if you don't even have children to put into the school? So that's very concerning.
So what are we doing about it?
I'm worried we've dropped the ball a little on counterterrorism, especially on Al Qaeda, right? There really is no government collection or understanding of what Al Qaeda senior leadership's doing. They don't even collect on them anymore. We have no collection or focus on the bin Ladens at all. So there's very limited funds. There's very limited persons on it. And then, as you know, when you divert all your focusing resources to one thing, then obviously you lose capacity in other areas. And the way we left Afghanistan, the commander of CENTCOM said this: we lost 98% of our humans. So we don't have the information to even get ahead of this, unfortunately.
The group that is most active in targeting us, I saw something from, who was it, that said they were very concerned. Was it Saudi Arabia? One of the countries overseas said yesterday that they blamed this attack on the Muslim Brotherhood.
Well, so the individual showed, support to the Muslim Brotherhood. The thing with the Muslim Brotherhood is almost like a fabric of like the terrorist movement, right? So almost all of them support the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is almost like the PR firm of terrorists, right? They're the ones who go into countries, they pay off the politicians, they create organizations, could be sports clubs, could be NGOs, and they bring that influence into these countries. We've seen them have a lot of effect in Spain, in France, to where those governments now actually can't tackle the Muslim Brotherhood influence. So it's kind of like two sides of the same coin, if that makes sense. The problem in the United States is we've never banned the Muslim Brotherhood, so nobody's doing anything effective against them.
What happens if how do you see this unfolding? First of all, I've got a story next hour about, what is it, Holland, I think, that is just on the verge of collapse. And they just will not, do the right thing. And it's happening all over in Europe. And I'm very concerned that Europe is just a ticking time bomb, that something begins to falter there. And, the Muslim Brotherhood or whomever gives word, go, 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 and it'll just become a bloodbath over there. Which is first? Are they first, or are we first, or does it matter?
Well, there's multiple things going on, right? So I do think there's probably some more near-term ISIS-related attacks in Europe before, like, a huge attack in the United States, especially in Germany. But there is very large plots, like in the United States, and they're in Sweden, France, United Kingdom, and Norway. So they are targeting certain countries, and they're targeting the countries, as you can imagine, where they have the most supporters. They're able to bring in the most terrorists. Law enforcement's very weak, right? Like, they'll pick up these guys and put them in prison for 5 years. Just like about 10 days ago, Germany picked up a terrorist. He's actually slotted to be one of the U.S. Homeland Attack Commanders. The crazy part is they pick him up and then they publicly say, oh, yeah, we detained a Syrian from ISIS. He's a Libyan from an Al Qaeda affiliated group. So they don't even know the people they're arresting, which is really scary. And this is a problem all across Europe, especially in Sweden's a nightmare. There's a terrorist attack like every day in Sweden.
I was over in Sweden. Gosh, it's funny because I left Iraq and was going to do a show in Sweden. This was probably 10 years ago, because I thought Sweden is a canary in the coal mine. They are so open. They're so friendly. They take everybody in. And my crew was accosted on the streets. It happened later to 60 Minutes, and everybody, talked about that one. But the exact same, the exact same thing happened to us in the same place a year before, and it was out of control then. I think this thing, if it happens, is just going to happen so rapidly. It will be hard for the West to catch its breath.
Yeah, and that's the way you need to do it, right? So obviously the fall of Afghanistan happened rapidly. The fall of Syria happened rapidly. They're trying to make the fall of Mogadishu happen rapidly. It's going slower than they expect. Like, the terrorists are starting to realize these blitzkrieg type of events are the better way to do some of these operations. So they're planning them a lot more aggressively. I think we're still stuck in like a 2001 terrorist mindset, that they move slow, they're methodical, and I think it's become a lot more aggressive, and I don't think our assessments have evolved with the terrorist mindset.
I really wonder, because, you see what Ukraine did in Russia over the weekend. I mean, they took out, the estimates are, they took out a third of the Strategic Air Command of Russia. That's something we would have loved to have be able to do years ago. we don't even think that way. And here's this almost now third world country with no army to speak of doing that kind of damage miles, thousands of miles inside of the borders. My gosh, what could they do here?
Yeah, and I mean, that was impressive. They took out like $7 billion of equipment just using drones, which is so low cost. And low cost is obviously great alternatives for terrorists, right? That's a very scary thing. And it's no secret terrorists have used drones, right? Obviously, they even recorded themselves doing attacks with drones. Yes. But in Syria, they've had drone camps. And Al Qaeda, they have a camp solely focused on drones and using them to deliver bombs and other type of things. So, yeah, that's going to be the future, unfortunately. It doesn't have to just be nation states, right? It is these terror factors.
If you were in charge today, what advice would you be giving the American people? What should we be hardening? What should we be doing? What should we be looking for?
Well, the way I look at it is, it's obviously we don't exactly know where the attack's going to happen, but we know what different things the terrorists trained on. So that's what I like to tell people. So they trained on attacking hospitals. They trained on attacking shopping centers. They trained on schools. They trained on nightclubs, right? So think about it. If you harden those type of locations, then if the terrorist was going to hit you, now they have to recalculate. Now they have to make a different decision. Now you pushed off their timeline, right? You made it harder for them and hopefully easier for law enforcement to pick up something in the casing or something in advance to help sort this, right? So that's a lot that I like to focus on. And then another thing is really just be a force multiplier. Be someone who can help, right? Stop the bleed. Be able to help someone in an emergency because it's going to take time for first responders to arrive. And the terrorists are likely going to attack first responders like they did in Israel, and you have to keep that in mind.
You just recently tweeted there have been multiple incidences of suspected terrorists casing churches across the U.S. If this happens at your parish, don't brush it off. Report it. How do you harden your church?
Well, a lot of churches have started to make these security and safety teams. That's a really good start. The best part is if you have any sort of visitors, they have to do some sort of registering outside of the parish, right? So you know who's in the building. Anything you can do external is the best way to do it, but it's also just common sense, right? If people show up with weird questions, and I'll just tell you, there are some similar situations. A lot of the situations, it's 2 to 4 men teams that come in. They are not Christian, and they have cover stories. Some of the cover stories are like, oh, my religious elder told me I need to go explore other religions. And then they say they're Muslim or they say they're Hindu. And then they start asking questions about the security team, which would be very strange if you're looking at joining a church. And then the main question that's been most concerning that we've seen in a lot of different locations is, do you live stream your service? So we do think like some of those items, if they're talking about those, get their photos, take their driver's license, right, and then report it to law enforcement. And the more people who can do pieces of this, hopefully law enforcement can put it all together, right, and see where things are connected and get ahead of it. And not everything's terrorism. Remember, there's crime rings targeting these churches, so you can protect yourself in multiple ways.
So you're thinking that the live streaming is a problem because they want it to be viewed and recorded?
That's our assessment. It's just a very strange question, as you can imagine, if they're not intending to join and become a member of the church.
Okay. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, Sarah, and have done in the past. Really appreciate it. And please, if you see anything, let us know. We'd love to get any warnings that we can help people prepare for. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet. You bet. Sarah Adams.